Welcome everyone to today's presentation. Today we have Lori Smith giving us a very interesting presentation on esoteric astrology, personality, soul, and spirit, and esoteric astrology perspective. This is a very interesting topic that isn't as quite as mainstream, if you will, if you want to call it astrology at all mainstream. But so we have we're all very excited, I think, Lori, for this, and looking forward to what you have to share with us today. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jeff, for that introduction. And hi, everyone. I should say thank you to OPA, especially for inviting me to do this presentation and on esoteric astrology. It's a system that's just not really represented that much. We don't see it out there in these organizations so much. So I'm very thankful and honored to be here and share I know, and hopefully you'll find some value in it as well. So let me just preface this talk by saying that the information I'll be presenting today is based upon the teachings of Alice Bailey, who worked closely with the Tibetan master Dwaj Khul for a period of 30 years, and that was between the years 1919 and 1949. They completed 24 books together, which in their totality comprise what is known as the second installment of the Ageless Wisdom philosophy. So I'm going to actually show this quote here, an excerpt.
Lori, do you mind opening up all the way so we can see the whole slide? Just hit from beginning up there at the top. And
oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And then just use your arrows and you can move to the next one from there. Great. Thank you.
Okay. So this is from the book Initiation Human and Solar, but it's a really good opener for what I'm presenting today. And so I'll just read it. The development of a human being is but the passing from one state of consciousness to another. It is a succession of expansions, a growth of that faculty of awareness that constitutes the predominant characteristics of the indwelling thinker. It is the progressing from consciousness polarized in the personality, the lower self, to that polarized in the higher self or soul, thence to a polarization in the monad or spirit, till the consciousness eventually is divine. So here is what will be astrology, and then the 7 rays, the 7 planes of our solar system, and I'm going to demonstrate an esoteric astrology zodiac. We're going to look at the sacred and the non-sacred planets, the personality and soul and spirit, and the rulerships, and then initiation, and then the last half of the presentation, and it should be divided about equally. We'll be looking at the chart of Dane Rujar and applying all of these principles, the foundation that I've established before. And especially interesting looking at him at his level of consciousness. So, what is esoteric astrology? Esoteric astrology is known as the astrology of the soul because it focuses upon the soul and its manifestation, upon causes rather than effects. It seeks to understand the soul's relationship to spirit and the deeper realization of the oneness and the interconnectedness of all life and with all kingdoms and nature. It is particularly concerned with the evolution of consciousness and the study of the spiritual essence which underlies all outer phenomena. 7 rays. So the 7 rays are very significant in the teachings of esoteric astrology. They are emanations of divinity, a higher or deeper set of forces emanating from the originating life itself, otherwise known in the Christian Bible as the 7 spirits before the throne of God. The first differentiation within the absolute resulted in 3 primary rays of aspect, represented as a Trinity, the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit. The divine marriage, when Father Spirit and Mother Matter united, the soul or consciousness was born. Ray 1 expresses will or power. Ray 2, love, wisdom. Ray 3, active intelligence. And then added to the 3 in 1 are 4 primary rays of attribute that express the qualities of the 3 primary rays in greater detail. So Ray 4 expresses harmony, beauty, and art, sometimes known as harmony through conflict, beauty, and art. Ray 5, concrete knowledge and science. Ray 6, idealism and devotion. Ray 7, ceremonial. And so they are the building forces that are behind the entire creation and workings of the universe. And they each express their own vibration, their color, and their note. Here is an image, an artist, colleague, friend of mine, Dwayne Carpenter. He's doing a lot of fantastic esoteric work that he put together some years ago. And but just to say, the 7 stars of the Great Bear, Ursa Major, they're the originating source of the 7 rays of our solar system. Each ray transmits its energies through 3 constellations of the zodiac to our sun, which then reach our Earth primarily through one of the sacred planets. And, you know, if you think about it, we repeatedly find in existence septennets of 7. So we have, 7 continents, 7 oceanic bodies of water, 7 major notes of the musical scale, 7 major colors of the rainbow, there's 7 chakra centers, 7 major organs of the body, and the list goes on. So anyway, everything in life is governed by the rays, including constellations, planets, and even our own psychology. The physical etheric body is found on one of the 7, and our monad, which is the ray of the absolute. So in esoteric astrology, we factor in the ray influences which govern the various planets and constellations in one's chart. And the 12 signs of the zodiac are different combinations of the rays, offering 12 different spiritual developmental experiences. Now, our solar logos is on the 2nd ray, meaning it is the qualities of love and wisdom which are being developed in this solar system. 7 rays that function within our solar system are 7 subrays of the 2nd cosmic ray. The 7 planes of our solar system. So here's a diagram found in the books Initiation, Human and Solar, and a Treatise on Cosmic Fire by Alice Bailey, showing the 7 planes and 49 subplanes of our solar system, and otherwise known as the constitution of man, because we exist on all these planes. And there's a more simplistic chart to it, to the right, but essentially it's the same chart. So this chart is fundamental to esoteric astrology, as it identifies just where the soul is located in relation to the personality and the spirit, the monad. So, but in reality, the planes are not horizontal, they're spherical, but for our understanding, this illustration is helpful. So planes can be compared to dimensions representing different levels of consciousness, which have frequencies, vibrations, purity of substance, ever finer and the finest at the 1st or logoic plane, which is at the top, and the densest at the 7th plane, the physical. And so although we exist on these higher planes, most people haven't awakened in consciousness to these higher realms. Our consciousness ascends as we evolve. So the goal of evolution is the attainment of consciousness on all planes. So each plane is governed by a planet. The 7th or physical plane, the bottom, is governed by the moon. And here is a relationship to the moon governing the physical body and its relationship to matter and form. The 6th plane is the astral plane, ruled by Mars, and here it reflects the potent energies of the desire nature and oftentimes emotional storms. Venus governs the 5th plane, the mental plane, representing the power of mind, transmuted into wisdom through the instrumentality of love. It is love, but it's intelligent love. And this is also the same plane the soul is found on. The soul is actually found on the higher mental plane. But the 4th plane is the Buddhic plane, governed by Mercury. So on this plane of union, Mercury is the messenger, the mediator, as the middle principle, as the transmitter of spirit, which is above, to the personality, which is below. And you'll notice that it's right at the midway point. This is the plane of pure reason, pure intuition, illumination, without any distortions, illusions, or veils that can be found on the lower astral plane. The fifth plane is the atmic plane, the plane of spiritual will. This plane is governed by Saturn, and in a sense, shows us what we have to conform to, to the will of deity. The sixth plane is the monadic plane, the plane of pure spirit, and the plane of Akasha. The ray of the absolute, or spark of divinity in you, is anchored here into this solar system. It is governed by Jupiter. So monadic consciousness here reflects in a realization of a higher truth of our expansive identity. But only very great avatars or beings have achieved this level of consciousness, such as the Buddha or the Christ. The first plane is the Logoic plane. It is governed by the sun. It is a sea of fire. It is God consciousness. So as the chart on the right shows, the personality comprises it's circled, the lower 18 subplanes. And that includes the physical, the emotional, the astral planes, up to the fourth subplane of the mental plane. And the egoic lotus, causal body, or home of the soul, is located on the three higher subplanes of the mental plane. On the chart to the right, you can see some lotus petals, and then of course, it's called the divine ego. It's indicated by a triangle on the chart to the left. So, that's the home of the soul in the dimension. The pineal gland in the center of the brain where the energies of the soul are registered, which in essence is a spark of pure spiritual fire. So the monadic plane is the ultimate source of consciousness in this solar system. And you'll notice that the soul is found pretty much the midway point between the monad and the personality. So man has to bring down into conscious full control the God within. So, it's said that the soul sees in two directions, one gazing upward toward the monad, the other gazing downward at its shadow, the personality. The goal is to bring alignment between the soul and the personality, and later still between the monad, or spirit, soul, and personality. So, but to put all this in context, esoteric astrology, it emphasizes the soul and its manifestation and not the transitory desires and wish life of the personality. The soul is that which holds the treasure, the very best we have garnered throughout all of our previous lives. The personality and its ray, it changes from lifetime to lifetime. The soul does not. The soul doesn't care itself with how powerful you are, how much money you've earned. It cares that you are in right relationship with the universe, that you decentralize from the lower personal self, identify with the greater good, and contribute to the upliftment of humanity. The I becomes the we. The soul identifies with the group and is group conscious. And it's the soul which stages our next incarnation. The circumstances pattern to conform to liabilities we must meet or reconcile, as well as providing the environment which supports the unfoldment and allows opportunity to realize our full potential. Esoteric Astrology Zodiac. So here is a good esoteric astrology reference chart. Sacred.com, but all of the information derived from it is from the book Esoteric Astrology by Alice Bailey. But it shows the rays which govern each sign as well as their color and the exoteric, esoteric, and hierarchical rulerships. And if anyone would like a PDF copy of this chart, I will be happy to email it to you. But the innermost ring shows the exoteric or orthodox planetary rulerships, which govern average or ordinary humanity, we would say. So typically, these are individuals who are working at developing an integrated personality. And the exoteric rulers, this is important to add, they're never negated. They're always included in esoteric astrology, but their energies are dominated by other rulerships when an evolutionary leap has occurred in the consciousness. The middle ring shows the esoteric or soul rulerships, which are influential in the lives of advanced humanity, meaning those who have awakened to the energies of the soul and are characteristically those who have, through a self-enforced, self-disciplining effort, sought to dominate and control their lower nature. Personality soul infusion is underway, a greater inclusiveness is evident, and an expanded awareness is occurring. The hierarchical rulerships apply to only very advanced humanity, and that's the outermost ring. Those whose consciousness is universal, whose work in the world has broad scope and impact for the upliftment and betterment of humanity. They are in touch with the power and will aspect of their monad or spirit, and are also responsive to the greater zodiacal constellations such as Ursa Major, Sirius, and Pleiades. Spirit, soul, and personality are now one integrated unit. The sacred and the non-sacred planets.
Hey, Lori, I maybe you are about to go over this right now, but I noticed on that zodiac 2 slides back that there was a glyph that a lot of us maybe haven't seen before or very often in the second house of Taurus.
Okay.
Traditionally,
oh,
it was
let me
Vulcan.
go back.
Yeah, Vulcan.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jeff, for pointing that out. That, yeah, the key to it is actually at the bottom, and it is the planet Vulcan. That is the rulership for Taurus on both the esoteric and the hierarchical level. And it is a first-rate planet. Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet. Yeah, feel free to, you know, if I need to clarify something at any point, feel free to just jump in.
Thanks. You're doing great. Love it.
So there are 7 sacred and 5 non-sacred planets. Now, the term sacred and non-sacred is related to the spiritual status of the planetary logoi and is concerned with their point in evolution. A planet is regarded as sacred when its informing spiritual life has taken 5 of the major cosmic initiations, and a non-sacred planet is one whose planetary logos has not taken these initiations. So the sacred planets are Vulcan, and the parentheses will indicate the ray that governs that planet. So we have Vulcan, ray 1, Jupiter, ray 2, Saturn, ray 3, Mercury, ray 4, Venus, ray 5, Neptune, ray 6, and Uranus, ray 7. Those are our sacred planets. The non-sacred planets are the Sun, ray 2, the Moon, ray 4, the Earth, ray 3, Mars, ray 6, and Pluto, ray 1. So the sacred planets support the energies of the soul, and the non-sacred planets strengthen the energies of the personality. And so really important to hear this part. The Sun and Moon in esoteric astrology are veiling planets. So the physical Sun is considered a non-sacred planet influencing the personality. However, it's considered very sacred at the esoteric soul level, where it unveils the energies of Neptune, the heart of the Sun, and solar fire, and at the hierarchical spirit level, Uranus as the central spiritual sun and electric fire. So likewise, the Moon is regarded as veiling or hiding other planets, and as she especially governs the physical body, it is a protective measure. The Moon unveils Vulcan at the esoteric level and Uranus at the hierarchical level. Now, this etheric body, until it has reached the stage where it has been transmuted and transformed to such a degree as to safely absorb these high energies. Otherwise, it would produce too much strain and overstimulation in the nervous system. And important to note that Vulcan remains undiscovered physically, which is why it has no rulership on an exoteric level. Vulcan's placement will be found within 8 degrees on either side of the sun. So you have to experiment with it. I use solar fire, and I use their esoteric page, and it will naturally calculate it. So anyway. All right, personality, soul, and spirit.
Lori, are you saying that Solar Fire actually has an esoteric astrology like kind of platform?
Yes. Yes, they do. In fact, I decided not to use it, but there's an esoteric page where it will actually show you the rays of, you know, the sacred and the non-sacred planets. And it takes some, for a lot of people, I found it causes more confusion, and I really have to explain it. And it doesn't necessarily always show the importance of the ray of the rising sign, you know?
Yeah.
And so it takes a little while to actually explain the chart itself, the way they have it weighted. So I opted not to include it in this presentation, but yes, they do have an esoteric page.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
You bet. So personality, soul, and spirit. This is primarily what we're talking about today. So esoteric astrology, it includes the influence and other techniques that many other systems of astrology ascribe to, but in addition, it uses esoteric rulerships when a completely new spiritual orientation and awakening has occurred, demonstrating that one is clearly on the path. When that is not the case, the esoteric astrologer understands that the orthodox rulers will dominate, but will still bring attention to the client of the soul ruler as something to aspire towards, making the client aware as to how their soul is seeking to guide them in this lifetime. As I alluded to earlier, when this reorientation in the life has occurred and one is on the path, the esoteric forces combine with the forces of the exoteric or orthodox planets, but they do not negate their influence. They only supplement and dominate them. So the spirit or monad, this is the point opposite the sun in your chart. And for example, on this chart, of course, it would be, it's the earth. It's always the earth, which is exactly opposite your sun sign. So here showing 9 degrees Taurus would be the earth, the monadic point. It is said that ultimately all monads have their home within the sun. But the monad is the ray of the absolute, the ultimate source of consciousness for you in this solar system. One is unable to access and respond to this high level, which puts one in touch with the will and power aspect of deity until they have passed through what is known as the transfiguration initiation. We use hierarchical rulerships when delineating a chart for someone at this level. And true enough, one at this level typically will not come to you for a reading because they can already see into the future and can easily access the Buddhic plane. They have, you know, spiritual intuition and instant knowing. So, you know, though it is unlikely that many of us will reach this level of consciousness in this lifetime, it is still very beneficial to know where your monad is located and the qualities associated with the sign and house position in which it is placed. Always something to aspire towards. The rising sign indicates the energies the soul is seeking to manifest through. So here, you know, we have Taurus rising. The spiritual goal and purpose of the immediate incarnation and of succeeding incarnations, or for a period of 7 lives. It holds the secret of the future, in addition to Rahu, the North Node, of course. The aspects to the rising sign, the esoteric ruler of the rising sign, its placement by house, aspect, you know, by sign, aspect, and house position will indicate much in terms of the potentials and challenges of the soul and its purpose in this life cycle. And then, of course, you also want to carefully note the rays, which express through the rising sign. So this individual would have, I'm not going to interpret this chart, this is just indicating where these energies would be. So for this individual, the ruler of the rising sign, of course, would be Vulcan. And it rules on the esoteric and hierarchical level for Taurus. So you want to look at the rising sign Taurus about the soul purpose, but to get more of an understanding what that's around, you also have to look at the ruler of the rising sign and everything that's related to that. So the sun sign, its house position, its house placement, its aspects primarily represent the personality. It indicates the level of personality integration already achieved and the present point of unfoldment of soul qualities. The rays which govern the sign, the sun sign, have to be taken into consideration also. So, you know, as the sun is the life-giving principle and relates to our will, creativity, and purpose, it's what sustains life. It's always a strength and a resource in the chart. However, the personality will eventually reach its limitations too. So the moon sign, its house placement and aspects are strongly seen relating to the emotional body, governing the past, biological karma, our instincts, the subconscious and early conditioning. In esoteric astrology, it is sometimes referred to as the prison of the soul because it is through our emotional reactions and attachments it can prevent the soul energies from manifesting. Also in esoteric astrology, a planetary body's quality of radiation directly relates to its own spiritual evolutionary status. The ageless wisdom philosophy tells us that in a previous solar system, the moon had a radiation of its own. In this solar system, it does not. It only reflects the light of the sun. Still, it governs the physical body to a large degree and is related to matter as the mother of form. And here again, you want to factor in the rays in which govern the sign the moon is placed in. Initiation, usually the Scorpio type like this. Okay, so, talking about initiations, it is central to all the teachings found in the blue books, but particularly in esoteric astrology. So we could say, some choose to wind their way around the mountain, taking the much longer but much easier path, while others choose to climb steadfast, straight up, taking the much more difficult but quicker path. In these teachings, it is said that no one can take a single step up the path without being tested as to their ability to sustain themselves. There are 9 possible initiations in our solar system, though only the first 3 will be discussed here. Essentially, initiation results in transmuting the energies of the physical body at the first, transforming the energies of the astral body at the second, and transfiguring the energies of the mental body at the third. Only the third initiation is considered the first major initiation, as the 2 earlier ones are considered initiations of the threshold. Each initiation is a progressive sequence of energy impacts, a realization of increased unity with all life, and an expanded consciousness at each level. So taking these one at a time, transmutation. The first initiation marks the beginning of the true birth and awakening into the spiritual life. It represents the initial appearance of the Christ spirit or soul energy within the human heart, and it involves the physical plane of consciousness. It marks the first attempt of the soul to gain control over the personality, demonstrated here as a discipline and control over the physical body and its lower appetites. Often, there is a crisis in the life either prior to or during this period, which invokes the energy of the soul. It is the mystic stage. Now, the progressed transit or solar arc directed chart will actually show the planets Pluto and Vulcan active during this period. Pluto brings to the surface all that obstructs in the lower regions, and Vulcan through pressure, revealing that which is deeply hidden, bringing it up into the light. Essentially, it's purification. Ray 7 also governs this initiation, as there is an attempt to create a new rhythm, a new order in the life. After this initiation, the esoteric ruler should be applied. We would say that the personality is 25% soul infused. After this period, there's much conflict is experienced because now one becomes aware of the duality in their nature between the higher self, the soul, and the lower self, the personality, the pull between the pairs of opposites. Transformation. This is the second initiation, is characterized by baptism. Although the personality still dominates, the soul is now taking notice and is actively seeking to guide the life. One has demonstrated control of the physical plane, and now the testing and struggle begins on the astral plane. The second initiation is one of the most difficult of all. The effort to release the personality from emotional control begins. Although one has experienced a pronounced reorientation to their life, they are in a state of emotional chaos and glamours. typically one is experiencing a deep emotional crisis in the life just prior to or during this period. The search for peace amidst emotional storms invokes the soul. So, this is a meeting of fire and water, essentially. And initiation is the invocation of fire, a higher energy imposed upon a lower vibration that causes instability until that new vibration is integrated. Well, when you have fire meeting water, what happens? It produces steam, fog, glamours, illusions. And so it's that period where one is seeking to really clear themselves from all that. And yet, because this fire is put to water, the emotional body is amplified, So, but extreme effort is shown in trying to bring the emotional life under the guiding control of the mind. Success at this stage results in a reorientation where one is beginning to submerge their personal point of view and the recognized need of the whole. Consciousness is becoming more inclusive, and this is what is referred to in the teachings as the stage of discipleship. Venus, Jupiter, and Neptune will be active in the chart during this period, and Scorpio as well, at birth or by the transits or progressions or solar arc directions. Venus assists in developing intelligent love, Jupiter expands the heart center, and Neptune governs the higher solar plexus center, transforming desires into spiritual aspiration. This initiation is predominantly associated with, and Ray 6 governs it. So, excuse me. Often a powerful personality experiences its crash here, humbling itself to its knees, and finally subduing the desires of the lower self in obedience to the soul. The best depiction at this stage can be found in the Alice Bailey book, The Labors of Hercules. So Hercules is at the 8th gate, which is the test of Scorpio, where Hercules was asked to battle and kill the 9-headed Hydra. To make a long story short, each head of the Hydra represented, subjective aspects of the personality that had to be conquered. Hercules tried various ways to kill the Hydra, but every time he cut off one head, another grew back in its place, which really meant that every time a low desire or thought is overcome, another took its place. So we finally found that it was only by kneeling in humility and raising the monster into the air, which is to say he had to translate his problem to another dimension in order to solve it. Each head of the Hydra represents one of the problems of the person who seeks to achieve mastery of himself. 3 of the heads symbolize the appetites associated with sex, comfort, and money. The second group of heads concerns the passions of fear, hatred, and desire for power. And the last 3 heads symbolize the vices of the unillumined mind: pride, separativeness, and cruelty. So anyway, a little long here, but this is an important stage. And after the successful passing at this stage, we would say that one's personality is 50% soul infused. So transfiguration. Here the work is with mental energy and the transmission of the will aspect of the soul. Prior to this major initiation and climaxing point, Mars and the Moon, veiling a sacred planet, which would be Uranus, cause a final battle. It's referred to, so the dweller, it's all of these unredeemed aspects of our lower self acquired throughout all of our incarnations, the illusions, the Maya, and it's kind of like seeing who's going to win the day, the soul or the personality. And Mars brings about this final battle with the soul on the final burning ground. And one of the reasons it is called the Transfiguration Initiation is because the entire personality is flooded with light from above. This initiation marks a climaxing point, a major emergence from the limitation of form and the point of entry into an essential spiritual state of being and awareness while living and working at the physical plane level. Ray 5 governs this initiation. Full soul control of the personality is demonstrated, coming through the mental body into the heart. The frequency and vibrations of one bodies are so pure and high now they can, for the first time, consciously respond to the ray energies of their monad. Alice Bailey in Esoteric Astrology tells us that those found here are fully self-conscious, a developed mystic, capable of pure vision, motivated by spiritual intent, a trained occultist, mentally polarized, and profoundly aware of the realities, forces, and energies of existence, and therefore free from the ordinary glamours and illusions which color the reactions on life of the average person. The physical body is pure, the astral body is stable, and the mental body is controlled. Personality soul fusion is complete. One is directly put in touch with their monad, their father in heaven, if you want to call it, and the power and will aspect. Consciousness is global, and their work for the upliftment of humanity is often profound. This initiation is typically the one associated with enlightenment, symbolically represented by Capricorn. You know, the mountain has been scaled, the mountaintop has been reached. So actually, when this stage is successfully passed, one has overcome their personal karma. To give you an example of third-degree initiates, Yogananda was one, Alice Bailey was another, Rudolf Steiner, Carl Jung, the Dalai Lama, and Mother Teresa, although it is said that they are probably taken the fourth just because of their sacrifice to humanity as well. And Jesus, but he went well beyond this initiation, but it's that the third where he's transfigured in light in front of the three apostles, Peter, James, and John, that most of us are familiar with. But that was at the third. And then Roberto Assagioli, the great psychologist who developed psychosynthesis. And interestingly enough, he was a student of DK's, Dwaj Kul. He was in Discipleship in a New Age, Volume 2, the Tibetan wrote many letters to him. He's known by the initials FCD, and that's no secret. So he was also very good friends with Dane Rudhyar. Okay, so this next page, just essentially, this next slide, just shows you everything that I discussed in terms of the astrological influences at each initiation. And so you can look at that.
Lori, I was wondering if you could explain just briefly, I know that you have a lot still to go over, but I don't want to waste your time, but for all of us who are maybe unfamiliar with Vulcan, if you can explain what the general energies are of Vulcan.
Yeah, Vulcan is a first-ray planet, okay, which means it's about power and will, and the power and will of the spirit. And Vulcan is mythologically, you know, the blacksmith, right, that hammers, and it's through the pressure of the hammering where, you know, eventually the diamond shines. Okay. And yeah.
Great.
Vulcan is a sacred planet, though, so it does relate to strengthen the energies of the soul and not the personality.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Of course. All right, it's Dane Rudhyar. This was taken, this excerpt from Dane Rudhyar. This is one of my favorite books of his, an astrological triptych, The Illumined Road. And I thought this what the discussion is today. And so man's personality is the contest, his body the gross and the subtle, the field of experience, his soul that which already has pierced through, spirit the gift after the victory, and God the eternal bestower. So, well, I think I went too fast there. Let's go back here for a minute. Just to say, you know, I chose to speak about Dane Rudhyar in particular because he's a brilliant astrologer and an amazing soul, but also He has many links with the ageless wisdom philosophy and the teachers of that philosophy. And although some of the language is different, much of his work parallels these teachings. He was very good friends with Alice Bailey, who published his book, The Astrology of Personality, a book he dedicated to her, and another book, New Mansions for New Men. He also had close associations and friendships with prominent theosophists, and 3 of his books were published by the Theosophical Publishing House: Occult Preparations for the New Age, The Astrology of Transformation, and Rhythm of Wholeness. He placed much value on theosophy and the work of H.P. Blavatsky and her work given out in Isis Unveiled and The Secret Doctrine, and he acknowledged how much it influenced his own mind and future work. So to start out, Rujar was against the predictive and event-oriented type of astrology and wanted to see a reformulation based upon the more comprehensive psychological and spiritual aspects. Like esoteric astrology, he understood the constellations as that which represented divine creative hierarchies, and stars the embodiment of great spiritual lives. His humanistic astrology was about the integration of the personality, which in esoteric astrology is a stage necessary before one can successfully. Path of initiation is none other than what is found in Rujar's teachings in his later books on transpersonal astrology, requiring the energies of the lower self to be transmuted, transformed, and transfigured in order to become a vehicle for the soul and spirit to manifest through. So, true to his, direct and very honest approach, he doesn't sugarcoat it either. In his book, The Sun is Also a Star, he writes, as the individual treads this dangerous and torturous path, he or she has to meet the challenges represented by the 3 planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Rather than walking with all human beings more or less at his own stage of evolution as part of a collective socio-cultural tide, on the path of initiation, the individual walks alone, surrounded by invisible alien presences, and encountering one test of sincerity, courage, endurance, and discrimination after another. Always referring to the influences of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto as the planet of great transformation, in esoteric astrology, these are among the planets which are active at the first 3 initiations. Rujar writes, as the disciple advances on the path and becomes repolarized by galactic forces operating through the 3 trans-Saturnine planets, new faculties begin to appear within the broadened and heightened field of existence. What was only latent as part of the vast potential inherent in human nature becomes actualized. In esoteric astrology, this is the expansion of consciousness, the integration of a higher energy pattern, the result from the successful passing of a given initiation. Rujar believed that every definite, progressed aspect or transit is an opportunity for transformation, expansion, or purification. So now let's look at the chart of Dane Rujar. Individual who by all accounts is known to be an initiate, meaning one who did achieve the 3rd degree initiation. So look at his chart from the personality, soul, and spirit levels, applying esoteric, and hierarchical rulerships, understanding that he identified on all 3 levels with these energies. From the personality perspective, we primarily look to his sun, its house position, its aspects, with the understanding that because he attained an initiate's level of consciousness, he will express the highest level of rulership his sun sign is found in. So Rujar is a 3rd house sun in Aries. The sun is exalted in Aries, cardinal fire in the house of the mind, communication and writing. Rujar is dynamic, direct, and courageous in both mind and speech. The sun in the house of mind, a pioneer and initiator of new ideas. Aries is on the first ray of will and power, indicating much power and strength in his ideas. In the early days, coming under the influence of Mars as a natural ruler, and before the soul demonstrates control, the personality is very decisive but inclined to impulsiveness. Once the soul energies begin to supersede and dominate those of the personality, Mercury, as esoteric ruler of Aries, brings illumination to the personality, tempering impulsiveness through the control of the mind. At the esoteric stage, his writings reflect the energies of the soul and his ability to be a messenger on many levels, as one who initiates something new reflected in his work, as a musician, a composer, artist, poet, philosopher, and astrologer. Here we see someone with a vast storehouse of knowledge and wisdom who acts as an intermediary, bridging communications from a higher vision. Uranus governs Aries at the hierarchical level, which puts him in touch with spiritual power. Reinforced also because Aries is a sign predominantly on the first ray of will and power. Uranus is the seventh planet, which is the ray which anchors spirit into matter, bringing together soul and body, the higher and the lower, life and form. It's related to manifesting new rhythms, new patterns, and a higher archetype. Rujar created a revolution in astrology with incredible originality and an expansive universal consciousness. Here we see Rujar, the pioneer in modern transpersonal astrology. In his later books on transpersonal astrology, he demonstrates breakthroughs in consciousness, initiates and pioneers radical new realms of thought, has a vision to transform consciousness through his work, in many ways uncharted territory. This is the beauty of Uranus as hierarchical ruler of Aries. Now, to back up, though, in regards to his son, as it relates to one's identity and the father, a few things to point out here. He lost his father in 1911 while only a teenager, moved to America in 1916, and created a new identity in 1917. At that time, he changed his birth name from Daniel Chenevier, I believe, to Dane Rujar. His sun opposes Chiron in Libra from the 3rd to the 9th house, though Chiron can be considered conjunct the 10th as well, the midheaven. I'm unaware of his relationship with his father, only that he lost him at a young age. There does appear to be an identity crisis wound here, and forming a T-square with Jupiter and Gemini in the 7th, a very significant wound. He went to great lengths in creating a new identity and purpose. Was one of the ways in which helped him transcend and heal that wound. From the personality level, too, we see that Rujar has a sun in Aries in the 3rd, and it is square Jupiter in Gemini in the 7th. We know he is a very advanced soul, but taken alone, the aspect of Jupiter square his sun from the 3rd to the 7th gives a very active, expansive, restless, creative mind given to change because, a 3rd house sun and Jupiter's immutable Gemini. Jupiter, the planet of expansion in the 7th, many relationships and changes in relationships as well. And we do know that he was married 5 times. But still, Jupiter is a second-ray planet, and Gemini is a second-ray sign, the second ray being the ray of love wisdom. He also has Neptune right there on the cusp of the 7th as well. He was very inclusive, multi-talented, had many close relationships with spiritual teachers and other prominent individuals who really found much value in and supported his work. But also influencing the personality is the dispositor of the sun, Mars, which is in Gemini in the 6th, conjunct Pluto and Neptune, and closely trying the midheaven in Libra, trying Chiron as well. So Mars and Neptune are 6th ray planets, and Pluto a 1st ray planet. This combination gave him a higher vision than Neptune, that he could act upon Mars and communicate with much will and power, Pluto and Gemini, where he became a messenger of sorts, and I see that, strong Mercury's Gemini stellium. The first 6th ray influence describes one who would fiercely defend their ideal or what they believe in. Whatever he was devoted and dedicated to was expressed in his work, 6th house, midheaven, the trine, with much power, with potential large-scale social collective impact. The dynamic aspect of Mars, Pluto, and Neptune conjunction in Gemini, with Neptune right on the 7th and squaring Mercury and Pisces in the 3rd, I would give Mercury to the 3rd. And with Mercury ruling his 7th, probably presented some challenge in his personal relationships on some level. So now a look at his rising sign, which indicates the energies his soul is seeking to manifest through in this life, his soul purpose, which for most people would be among the highest, potential we could achieve. He has Sagittarius rising. Sagittarius has 3 rays expressing through it. The 4th ray of harmony through conflict, art, and beauty. The 5th ray of concrete knowledge and science. And the 6th ray of devotion and idealism. This is the sign of the philosopher, the sage, the seeker after higher truth, and the journey in discovering that truth. In esoteric astrology, the true disciple, potentially at least. Rujar is incredibly inspiring and very intelligent. He did receive a bachelor degree in philosophy at age 16 and was composing music by the time he was 17. The orthodox ruler, which we will still consider on one level, is Jupiter, prominently placed angular in the 7th house of relationships in Gemini. So, in a way, he expands the perceptions of others. And again, the role of the messenger is seen. Jupiter is a second-ray planet, second-ray sacred planet, and Gemini is a second-ray sign. Rujar has more planets on the second ray than any other. It is the building ray, unifying, inclusive, the ray of love, wisdom. Jupiter in Gemini is a prolific writer and teacher, and no doubt with his third house sun, contributed much in terms of the legacy he left behind and the 40-plus books and hundreds of articles that were published. So most essential is the placement of the soul or esoteric ruler of his chart. With Sagittarius rising, it is the Earth, which is placed in the 9th house, the house that Sagittarius naturally rules, which makes it very strong. The Earth as soul ruler takes one through global experiences in different cultures in order to develop soul or group awareness. In the 9th, it depicts one who has a higher philosophy or spiritual principle they live by, and one whose soul will take them to distant lands, traveling far and wide in order to fulfill its destiny and unfold its potentials. Esoterically considered, the 9th governs the spiritual path, the higher abstract mind, the universal mind, and wisdom teachings. The Earth is on this third ray of active intelligence, which gives curiosity to learn and explore. And it is also the ray which materializes ideas, synthesizes, gives the ability to use the abstract mind, and is also the ray which governs astrology. So the soul ruler of the chart is in Libra, in the 9th, in the sign of relationships. Relationships was a theme throughout all of his teachings, but it was very broad, applicable to his philosophy, such as in his book. He says in an astrological triptych, he writes, "The test of significance is the testing of a man's determination not to be contented with externals and mirages, but instead to search the very core of all relationships, personal and social, collective and universal, until he has reached the essential meaning." In other words, he was always identifying the truth and the authenticity of any and all of his relationships. But, in a universal sense, because he had universal consciousness. In regards to astrology, he says, astrology deals with the central problem of human existence because it refers to the most basic of all such problems, the meaning of the relationship between man and the universe of which he is a part. The soul ruler of his chart in Libra, as well as having Libra on the midheaven, can be seen also expressing in his life as, refinement, love of harmony, beauty, art, music, culture, and the many talents he had in that regard. So the natural ruler Venus, it's also sextile the moon and Jupiter as well. So not only was he very talented, his talents were supported by others. The soul ruler, the Earth, is with Chiron, and Chiron shares so much with Sagittarius because they're both centaurs, right? And wise teachers. From myth, we learn that Chiron's astrological significance embraces the archetypes as teacher, healer, musician, astrologer, and quest guide. Rujar was all of these. So the aspects his soul ruler makes is very important also. Jupiter is in a T-square with the soul ruler of the chart, Chiron and his sun, from the 3rd, 9th, and 7th houses, indicating a personality that goes to great extremes and in Aries may be impulsive extremes at first, in its pursuit of acquiring knowledge and wisdom, and the challenge of the soul, represented here by Earth in Libra, to temper the actions in order to maintain equilibrium. No doubt Rujar was on an accelerated pace in his journey, which would have presented some intense challenges. Once the personality gives its assent to the soul, and the soul becomes the guiding principle, great strength and potential is seen in this aspect. Okay, so he exaggerates, and the soul ruler chart the Earth in the ninth, conjunct Chiron, was the realization that Chiron is the bridge between Saturn and Uranus, and the spiritual guide who helps others cross that bridge, the bridge which leads one into realms which transform and transfigure consciousness, when true identification is made with the transpersonal planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. This is so significant, I think, in terms of the delineation of his soul purpose. And of course, his later astrology books were entirely about this journey. So, you know, Chiron, like I said, can be considered, I think, both ninth and 10th. And the 10th relates to the father as well. So, you know, obviously he carries a wound related to the loss of his father and how that impacted his own identity. But then he creates a new identity in another culture. And he not only transcends and heals the limitations of his past and the social, cultural, psychological patterns associated with it, but he becomes a bridge, a guiding light to help others do the same. And it's interesting to note too that the solar ruler of his chart, the Earth, is conjunct Chiron in Libra, and Libra rules the kidneys. I read in his biography that he required a surgical removal of his kidney at age 13, which exempted him in 1914 from military service, which actually saved his life because the regiment he would have joined was completely destroyed. You know, one can ask if this was divine intervention of his soul. However uncomfortable a kidney operation would be, you know, for a teenager. I just thought that was so interesting. Now, as to his moon, we can see that it's in the second house in Aquarius, the sign in which it is hierarchically placed. In other words, the moon, it's the best position for the moon sign to be in. And Aquarius is on the fifth ray, which is very intellectual and inclines one to experimentation, though Uranus is a seventh ray planet, which is consciousness. So this is one who can identify with and relate to many different types of individuals and cultures, making friends anywhere, emphasize too, because the moon is trine Jupiter in Gemini in the seventh. But in terms of referring to the moon as that which can hold one back, representing unconscious emotional habit patterns in Aquarius, we might say that, you know, it's an aloofness and the need for independence, which can cause separativeness. We do know that as an initiate, Rujar far exceeded any limitations indicated by this placement. The moon in the second square Uranus and Scorpio, well, the moon is in the second house and it's squaring Uranus and Scorpio, which is in the 11th. So he's someone who needed a lot of emotional space and freedom, you know, who can shock and surprise others, appearing emotionally unpredictable, and will break from the past and its conventions, conditions, and limitations. And when I was reading about his life in an astrological triptych, it said that, I thought this aspect related really well. It said that Rujar felt the urge to divorce himself from Europe, to seek a new world, a land into which he could, as it were, sow himself as a seed, carrying within his being the legacy of whatever was viable and constructive in the European past. In the late fall of 1916, he came to America, leaving behind his native land and ancestral French culture, as well as his family name. So, you know, very moon square Uranus, as far as, you know, I can see. But actually, I think it would serve many of us if we were able to break away, you know, from our past or the early conditioning that we were subjected to, in many cases, anyway. So in terms of monadic or spirit consciousness, Rujar, by all accounts, was known to have achieved this. The stage correlating to the third degree initiation, the transfiguration, which marks the stage where the entire personality is controlled by the soul illumined mind. And for the first time, one is put in touch with, in an experiential way, the will and power aspect of their monad or spirit. All of the limitations of the threefold personality are transcended. The monad is anchored in the heart, and an identification and inclusive oneness with all life here is known. Universal consciousness. and identification with one's service to the upliftment of humanity becomes more important to one at this stage than their individual self. Humility is the keynote of all initiates, and one would never divulge the what they would say cities or powers they have acquired through their expansion in consciousness. And Rujar is no exception. Still, Rujar tells us, and he is incredibly inspiring, I think, when he speaks of the transmutation of energy, which, if successful, can transform man into more than man, or when he speaks of the transformational process and the descent of spiritual power that through him, but not from him, will transform others. Rujar likes to use the depiction of Jesus when he was transfigured before his disciples, where his face did shine like the sun. This is, indicative of a third degree initiation, where in esoteric astrology, the energies of Uranus are unveiled. And Rujar is also on point here in his own words, taken from his book, An Astrological Triptych. The individual who reaches this Uranus stage on the illumined road is now more than man. The transfigured individual has become a focal center for the release of power of the universal mind, Uranus, the creative god of universal space. So put it back here for just a moment while we look at his monadic placement. Placement is at 2 degrees Libra in the ninth, exactly opposite, his sun. So for Rujar, the earth is the soul ruler of the chart. So his soul and monadic placement is the same. This is very significant. From my perspective, it seems once soul identification has occurred, spiritual progress and identification with monadic energy could potentially be rapid. The strength of Sagittarius rising is strengthened exponentially, having the soul and monadic rulers in the ninth house that Sagittarius naturally rules. Furthermore, the sign Libra in the ninth house holds many keys to his soul purpose and the highest potential he is to achieve in this lifetime. There isn't time to explore the entire chart, but important to note also that Ketu, the south node, is also in the ninth, so we know he came into this incarnation with much wisdom already. Libra is a sign of choice, and in fact, the soul mantra for Libra is, I choose the way which leads between 2 great lines of force. It is the sign associated with what is known in esoteric astrology as the reversal of the wheel. A choice is made in Libra at the point of balance, where the reversal of the wheel usually takes place. There one decides as to proceed as usual clockwise around the zodiac or reverse the wheel and travel counterclockwise back to source. In Esoteric Astrology by Alice Bailey, it is said, myriad of lives are conditioned by the signs of the zodiac proceeding due to precession, while the life of the disciple focused in soul consciousness is governed by the wheel proceeding anti-clockwise. Both motions are in potent opposition and produce that tearing asunder, which always precedes initiation. The crisis of the burning ground is brought about through the activity of Uranus, the esoteric or soul ruler of Libra, eventually bringing about the test and trials between the soul and the personality. No one seems to understand this better than Dane Rujar, as described in his book, An Astrological Triptych. Starting from the dawn point of his selfhood, man must first reach depth, then he ascends counterclockwise to zenith, ever more radiant, with the realization of ever deeper depths experienced as shrines of the eminent God. Remember that monad is God in you. A cyclic symphony, a symphony in 12 great tests, 12 great avenues of victory or disintegration. Each type of test presents a negative as well as a positive solution, a fall and an emergence. To every individual belongs the power to choose. It is his divine birthright. So point here is the reversal of the wheel and the power to choose. These are Libra themes, which sign holds both his soul and monadic placements. So, Libra is also the mediator, and this was part of Rujar's destiny, to become a mediator between philosophies, spiritual teachings, and even cultures. Libra is the sign of relationships, and for Rujar, Libra holds his dharmic point, it's his midheaven, as well as the soul ruler of his chart. To him, it was about a personal responsibility to a global future for mankind. He felt that a fundamental change in consciousness and in the quality of social and interpersonal relationships had to take place. He was on a quest to bring harmony and balance to the world. Uranus and Saturn rule Libra at the soul and hierarchical spirit level, and they are both in Scorpio. He felt a responsibility to transform society. And here too, we can view the Sanskrit name he chose, Rudra. I can't even say it, sorry. The destroyer and regenerator, a Scorpio theme. Saturn relates to justice and law, meeting one's karma, facing tests, overcoming one's limitations. The consequences when one is not in right relationship. Rujar was sensitive to equality, fairness, and justice, all Libra themes. He was very concerned about the responsibility and the power of the astrologer. You can see where the principle of balance was so intrinsic in his life. Uranus is exalted in Scorpio, and here is expressed in Rujar's own words, the internal urge to enter upon the path of radical transformation. And of course, Uranus is favorably aspecting the nose as well. So Uranus in the 11th speaks volumes of his dedication to social reform. And Saturn, though close to the 11th, still in the 10th, as a transpersonal astrologer, he is a respected authority in the deeper mysteries of cosmos. So Rujar says that any individual seen as a transforming agent is essentially a warrior, which is a Scorpio thing. One can infer that when the tests of Scorpio were mastered, spiritual progress was rapid. Saturn in Scorpio brings tests in the right use of the desires and control of the astral body. In a wide opposition to Venus, karmic lessons in regards to relationships. But Rujar has Mercury in a grand trine with Jupiter and Saturn. Mercury is in Pisces in the 3rd, I would say, which is very intuitive, if not telepathic. Pisces is a sign most associated with spirit, giving much compassion and a desire to help alleviate suffering in the world. The grand trine gives an expansive and intuitive mind, and Saturn in Scorpio, deep psychological, spiritual insights. Rujar has some very significant fixed star placements. Polaris, the North Star, is within 1 degree orb of his Jupiter in Gemini. Polaris is the pointer, right? It's the pathway. It's the guide. And with Jupiter, the spiritual guide, teaching us or teaching others to find their way. Again, I keep hearing this theme with him, the messenger. Aldebaran is less than 1 degree orb with Rujar's Pluto. And Aldebaran, of course, is one of the 4 royal stars, related to the Archangel Michael, the Watcher of the East. And Michael is the military commander of the heavenly hosts. And Pluto, of course, is the first-ray planet of will and power. Fomolo, another royal star, the Watcher of the South, is conjunct Rujar's Mercury. It is one of the guardians of heaven as well, associated with the Archangel Gabriel and the birth of Jesus, representing a new stage in spiritual evolution. This aspect, in conjunction with Mercury, promises success as a writer, and we know that occurred. And Rujar wrote extensively and dedicated much of his work, both artistically, musically, and astrologically, to the life of Jesus and the significance and real meaning of the Christ. It was really central for him. In addition to also having Rahu, the North Node in Pisces in the 3rd, and because of other placements already discussed, I really see Rujar as a messenger of spirit. So to conclude this presentation, I'll read you an inspiring passage found at the end of Rujar's book, An Astrological Human. Initiation is the entrance into this realm of ideo-spiritual substantiality, the harmonic universal mind. Entrance as a conscious individual established in permanent identity. It is thus symbolically the ascension from the realm of earth substance to that of spirit substantiality, from the disharmonic mentality of mostly unconscious, instinct-bound and passionate men to the creative mind of divine harmony, in which transfigured individuals act as a nuclei of divine compassion and as agents for the release of the forever harmonizing and healing spirit within, yet beyond all existence. Okay, so that's going to conclude my presentation.
Thank
And
you so much, Lori.
I thank you who stuck with me and could get through that first part. And, you know, I don't know what kind of time we have left, but I would certainly be open to comments or questions if that's, how are we doing on time, Jeff?
Yeah, we're out of time, but we can definitely
Oh,
spend a few minutes to take questions if anybody has any. I think,
yeah, maybe just a few. It
yeah,
does look like we're,
I didn't get any throughout the presentation. So if any of you have anything you'd like to ask Lori, or if you were unsure of anything during the presentation, feel free to.
or any comments too, you know, that's fine as well.
Yep.
And if, just to also add that, like I said, I would be happy to email anyone if they would like a PDF copy of that Esoteric Astrology Zodiac, the reference chart, you know, feel
Absolutely.
free to
Yep.
email me and I'll send that to you.
Yep. That's great. And if anyone needs to know what Lori's email address is in order to get that, please let me know. I can email that to you as well. Lori, that was an extremely interesting presentation and it was fabulous. Thank you so much. You covered a lot of ground in a short period of time and I commend you for that. I'm grateful that this is going to be, that it has been recorded so that we can all go back to it and you know, hit pause and rewind a few times to hear what you have to say more than once to really let it sink in, because it was definitely a lot of amazing information.
Well, you know, Dane Rujar is really, I guess, at the foundation of the system of evolutionary astrology, and there is that connection in terms of approaching the chart based upon different levels of consciousness. Although, you know, Rujar, I have to say, did not use the different rulerships that esoteric astrology did. However, in terms of his transpersonal astrology and the path of initiation, there are incredible parallels there. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'd be very curious to look at the to study that esoteric chart, the zodiac you were talking about, more and really dive into it and kind of integrate it. I think I'm not alone there as well. Arlene writes, "Thank you, great presentation. I am among those who will need to process all this dynamic information." Yes, indeed, Arlene. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Arlene. Of course, it is a lot. You know, I told Maurice at one point you could do a whole hour presentation just on the 7 rays,
Yeah,
and
sure.
these are most of the fundamentals. There's more, you know. The egoic load is the home of the soul. You could do a whole presentation on that, or there's something called the Antakarana, and
Yeah, I
anyway.
mean, the body of work of Alice Bailey, and not to mention Dane Rudyard, is so vast, and it sounds like this field of astrology is very worthy of looking more into and studying more. So thank you very much, Lori. Kim Green writes, "Very interesting. I'd love to learn more." Yes, indeed. So Lori, thank you. And if anyone would like a copy of a PDF of that Zodiac, please just feel free to contact me at outreach@opaastrology.org. If you do know Lori's email address, of course, you can send it direct. You can write her directly as well. Lori, I don't know if you wanted to share that with everyone or not.
Yeah, my email is Lori@seriousmysteries.com. And of
Serious.
course, my website's seriousmysteries.com, as in the star, Sirius, Sirius. So yeah, email's Lori@seriousmysteries.com.
Great, Lori. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you hosting this, and appreciate all of your hard work as well.
Of
And
course.
I hope to see everyone at the retreat in Zion.
Yes, we're looking forward to it, and we really hope that everyone can put it together and figure out a way to make it happen in their lives, because it would be really great to have as many people there as possible. Bring all our community together. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a good rest of your Saturday, or perhaps is it Sunday anywhere out there? I don't know. But anyway, enjoy the rest of your weekend, everyone. Lori, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.